I was never one to believe in destiny, but as the Armenian proverb says, "Chakatagritz ches pachchin," you can't escape it. In early 2020, about 6 months after I had decided to move full-time to Armenia, I randomly Googled my mother's maiden name, and in the list of search results, Charles Mushan caught my eye. I never met this man, my grandfather. He left our world more than 20 years before I entered it, but I was always proud of and intrigued by him, even though I knew very little about him. He is the reason I repatriated. Charles is 25% of me, and that 25% drew me to check out my first Armenian event on Capitol Hill in D.C. in 2016, an event I almost didn't go to because I didn't feel Armenian enough. But at that event, I found out about Birthright, and the 25% I got from Charles qualified me for the program. So in 2018, looking for an adventure, I ended up finding my calling instead. That summer, I had the honor and privilege to volunteer at Aregak, a center for kids and youth with disabilities in Gyumri, where 6 years later, I still work as development officer. We also run, as many of you may know, Aregak Bakery, which is the first cafe in Armenia to employ people with disabilities. So back to destiny. When I clicked on my grandfather's name in the search results I mentioned just a bit earlier, this blurb from a 70-year-old ebook popped up on the screen. You can see it says at the bottom, "My grandfather was active for the past 8 years in the state program to encourage hiring of the handicapped." I was thunderstruck. I didn't know this about my grandfather, and it turns out he was promoting inclusive employment practices in the States in the 1950s, and now his daughter is doing the same in Armenia. So this started my intensive research into my grandfather's past, but I really wanted to know what was it that spurred him to work with people with disabilities. I was talking with my mom, and she said, quote, "He knew that every person was made in the image of God and had something to contribute to society." I loved that. I started talking with my aunt, and she said there was more to it as well. My grandfather Charles was adept in communication psychology, and he knew that the language of dignity was not enough to change hearts in the workforce. Thus, he would run a campaign called Hire the Handicapped. It was a PR campaign utilizing radio and TV to portray people with disabilities as an important resource that employers were overlooking. He was always on the cutting edge of his field, my grandfather. It was a joy to read more and more of the documents I found about him. He was using film in the 50s, and he wrote an article, "Films on the Physically Handicapped," explaining the power of film to inspire change. And he said, "Showing what the physically limited can do is far more important than the mere telling of it." So that struck a deep chord within me. It called to mind hashtags that we used when we were launching Aregak Bakery in 2018. We used the hashtag See This Ability as opposed to See Disability. We worked to show ability in action. My colleague Koval, who has Down syndrome, maybe some of you know him, he works at Aregak Bakery. He reminds me every day that people with special needs, just like any of us, are specially gifted by God with particular skill sets. If you've been to Aregak Bakery, you know he's an amazing waiter, and I often think about the fact that he's a way better waiter than I could ever be as a classically abled person. This year, we'll continue to change the game in Gyumri as we open Green Aregak, which is our city's first agricultural initiative to purposefully include people with disabilities. And we have big dreams to open more and more businesses that place an equal emphasis on social and enterprise. To close, I wish truly with all my heart that through some warp of time and space, I would have had the chance to meet my grandfather. I would have asked him to speak his sweet Western Armenian, and we'd laugh at the fact that we speak different dialects. We'd sigh about the historical twists of fate which led his granddaughter, but never him, to Armenia. Finally, I'd take him to Aregak and proudly introduce him to my colleagues who prove every day that it is their ability, not their disability, that counts. I don't look very much like my grandpa, but I love that I have his eyes, and I think we see life in the same way, that there are so many people to help, and there's so much work to do in our communities. And I hope here in Armenia I make half as much of an impact as he did in his short life. Thank you.
There are limits for reality, but there are no limits for imagination. A country like Armenia, and in general the whole world, needs us to dare to imagine. My name is Ezequiel Guiragossian, and in November 2023, I started a new period of living in Armenia, exactly 8 years after coming for the first time to this country in 2015 to live the Birthright experience. In this new phase, I have a strong and clear vision, spreading the circus arts and all of their benefits throughout Armenia, where I have seen that these activities are welcome and needed. Through workshops and performances, I am working towards the creation of the first social circus school in this country. In these last months, since November, I have been working with different organizations, mainly in Gyumri, Kornitsor, Boris, and Yerevan. And during the workshops and shows, besides smiles, that I value a lot, I realized that one of the most powerful things that I was awakening in my audiences, both kids and adults, was the capacity of imagining. There are a few points I want to make where I find imagination could be of service in the creation of a new society. Question: are there things we don't like or agree with in Armenia nowadays? Can we see alternatives to these difficulties? Imagination might come handy while envisioning a future that is different from the present. Innovation. With imagination, we can think of existing issues as possible new ideas, as opportunities. Thinking creatively in a problematic scenario can bring bright solutions to the table. Social change. The world can be harsh. That's why only through imagination we can envision a world without inequalities, discrimination, or any other type of violence towards others, people and animals, and also towards Mother Nature. Educating the younger generations with arts and culture fosters a mindset open to change, preparing them to contribute positively to the country's development. Resilience and adaptability. Imagination helps communities to adapt to adverse scenarios and this strength when facing challenges and afflictions. By bringing resilient strategies and creative solutions to help rebuild and improve systems affected by trauma. Dreamers are often called crazy or wacky. Imagination allows us to create new wealth and share them with others. And one more thing, imagination in order to be prosperous must lead to action. So, if you want to know more about the creation of a social circus in Armenia, get in touch, show me your interest, and help us keep this dream growing. Thank you very much.
You help kids say their R and their S sounds, right? And that is right, but it's really such a small fraction of what we do. Broadly speaking, we work with clients across the lifespan from infancy to end of life within two main umbrella categories: communication and swallowing.
I volunteered for the first time as an occupational therapist in Armenia with Birthright in 2017, and ever since I've remained involved and tried to support as I can. And this led me to founding Therapists for Armenia in 2019. With the goal to connect and strengthen rehab and disability services through collaboration with local, diasporan, and global experts in the field. Most of the work that we do is virtual, actually. We support almost every region of Armenia in that way, especially remote areas that don't have access to specialists or services. I also just want to highlight that at the core of our efforts, while it's wonderful that there's been so many initiatives on the ground with people who have moved to Armenia, that's not an option for everyone. So I just want to show this as an example for ways to be engaged and support development when you're not in Armenia yourself.
My name's Gokor Bandikian. I started in 2006 in the Ministry of Finance. I'm a finance guy. Was in university at the time. And that was the second time I was in Armenia, actually. And it was a eye-opening experience. Really saw Armenia through not a tourist lens, but through someone that would live here and work here. And that actually just opened the door for me. After that first Birthright experience in 2007, I ended up doing another internship, but through Armenian Assembly of America at the Central Bank of Armenia, and that's where I met my wife. Long story short, we went out, and then she ended up coming to the U.S. We ended up getting engaged, and she had to come back to Armenia, and she had like a 2-year hold on her passport. So at the time, if you all recall, back in 2010, we were still at the height of the Great Recession, and a lot of people were still unemployed. I was working for my father at the time, and I just told him, let me go to Armenia. I'll be with my fiance, and then once that 2 years is up, we'll come back. The 2 years ended up being 6. And I want to thank Sevan one more time, because he's the one who set me up with my first job placement here when I actually moved in 2011. And then after that, I went into the wine industry working for Vahe Koshkerian. I'm sure a lot of you guys know him as well. But back in 2016, unfortunately, my father passed away. And then I started thinking long term, like, okay, like, where am I going? Where do I see myself in the next 5 years, 10 years? So at that point, I decided, let me move back to LA, where I'm originally from, and, I can save up. And I was thinking, what can I do in the meantime, while in LA? As a finance guy, I'm trying to think of what industries I can do that I don't have to actively manage, and agriculture was one of them. And I love berries just in general. I don't know, show of hands, who loves berries here? Okay. And I was thinking, like, okay, like, what can I do that would be like a niche product? I did some research, and I found this berry called the kiwiberry. It's a mini kiwi. I don't know just a show of hands, how many have eaten a kiwiberry before? All right, not many people. It's relatively new. It's a non-fuzzy kiwi, grape-sized, about 10 to 12 grams, sweeter than a kiwi, and it has a lot of vitamins and minerals in it, and it's very exportable because you can pick it when it's rock solid, and it can ripen on a kitchen counter. So even against my family's wishes, back in 2020, I purchased the first 1.2 hectares of land from one of the villagers. It was 60 cents a square meter, so really, really cheap at the time. Unfortunately, I missed the train on purchasing more land. But luckily, last year I purchased another 8,000 square meters at $3 a square meter, so much, much higher. But right now I have the 2 hectares of land, and I also purchased 1,000 plants back in 2020, so I also have the plants up and running now in a nursery. The goal being to establish the vineyard this year, and eventually expand operations. The next problem, though, that I have, because I'm just thinking as a finance guy, I try to think 5-10 steps ahead, is scalability. So the next idea of mine was, well, why don't I go to the villagers and see if they want to be part of this cooperative? Because each family in the village has about 1,000 square meters of land in their backyard, and majority of the village is women. The men usually go on, to Russia on construction-related jobs, or maybe in Yerevan or Dilijan. They're not home much throughout the year. And it's mainly the women, with the kids that stay home. And there's a lot of empty land, basically, in the village. That's one of the things right now that we're doing. We're multiplying the plants, see who can opt into that program. And, for the women, it's great because it's right in their backyard. And it's literally, passive income, because it's a one-time crop, something that they would probably harvest by hand, standing up, nothing major. And it's something that can, give me scale and scalability for, competing on the world stage in a Middle Eastern market such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Emirates. And I think it'll be a win-win. The other things that I'm starting out that weren't mentioned here, again, because I'm a finance guy, I'm trying to squeeze productivity, is growing shiitake mushrooms, which is another side project that I'm doing. We're surrounded by forests in Margahovit, but no one's really growing mushrooms on a large scale. And one of the mushroom varieties that I'm trying to grow is shiitake mushrooms, which are, shiitake basically means like forest in Japanese, and they're log-based mushrooms, so they grow on logs. And because we have the logs, we have the supply there. we have the supply chain basically to make it on a commercial scale as well. And just to conclude, everything can be boiled down to a math problem and be solved. And Armenia's economic problems, read opportunities, in my case, are no exception. So thank you.
Hayuhis, Handcrafts, and Hayastan. Bit of alliteration. What have we been doing in our total existence as Armenians? We've been doing quite a lot. Armenian women made everything in the home for wearing, for using in the kitchen, for gifting, for the dowry. In Christian history, everything in the church is needle crafted and hand painted and gifted by the women of the community to the church. So other than that, one of our fantastic, also currently booming in the economy, textile arts is weaving. I know a lot of us come to Armenia or even from, wherever we're living currently, and we think, how can we support? And we buy a t-shirt with an Armenian print on it that wasn't even made here and all this kind of thing. I think we can do better. I think we really can, put our minds to it and do a lot more. And even so, even with products that are made in Armenia, we can really challenge a lot of companies right now to pay higher wages to the workers and to not fall into the unsustainable and unethical practices that go on in China and even in our next door neighbor's place in Turkey. Outside of, let's say, all the beautiful things that we can do in more couture embellishments, needle laces and things like this, now we're seeing a real influx in actual, production companies like, for example, Zara. I know many of you have probably heard Zara's making clothes in Armenia right now. All these places want to come here. Why? Because they do find cheap labor. What I think is really cool about this is we have an upper hand, unlike where slave labor already exists and is harming a lot of people's lives. We have like essential coffee breaks and like really good systems in the workplace, especially in Shirak region where I'm living, where I'm just like, this is perfect. If we can maintain selling our products to the world or to each other, even to local Armenian businesses, but still have good coffee breaks, still have a clean workroom, I think we win. I think we really win. Alongside this, from my own ancestry, you have this very famous image. It's black and white, but I'll talk you through it. You can see here insane needle craft, so lace embroidery on her sleeve. You can see all the gold and silver embellishment, which, yes, the aristocratic history of Armenians is that we embellished ourselves. And that showcased a lot of storytelling as well, who you were, why you were wearing things a certain way, and so on and so forth. If this is what we have in our past, a mix of the average people and then the high society people at different stages, even just in what we would call modern history, we have so much to work off. We have so much that we should, at the very least, I think, even if we're not, doing it for work, we can start to do something at home. So the next slide is going to be about where you can shop in Armenia to make sure that you're buying from Armenian makers, to make sure that you're getting behind this new industry in Armenia, because like tourism and like wine and like a bunch of things, we have right now a chance to build soft power, kind of like how there's K-beauty and K-pop and all that. So I guess I came here because I want to make sure that I use what I know and what I can give to be a part of that solution. So to have more soft power in our future. Actually, just today, I was running late and I had to buy brand new shoes. So I'm going to add to this that you must try Arli shoes. I think they have men's as well. But I was just obsessing this morning and I was like, which one do I buy? They're all so beautiful. So Lentex. Okay, Lentex Home is the easiest place for you to shop. It is so affordable. We're made in Gyumri with Lentex specifically. And at the moment, yes, I've understood from some of my colleagues in the industry there that the wage is low, but the wage is low in Shirak region in general. This does have to change. But with our buying power, if you are stinging from your wallet into Armenian, specifically from Shirak region, you are telling them to keep going, keep producing more, keep investing more. It's just the way economy works, I guess. Next to you can see similar kind of look. So these are brands that you can easily substitute H&M for all that crap. You can substitute it out. You can start buying from Lentex. You can get home goods there. Plus, you can shop from Elegant. Elegant is a bit more of a going out, dressing nice brand. And they are really good. Light Effect is really cool because they're now branching out into the US as well. There's streetwear everywhere in the world. Like, there's just a surplus of it. However, if you're selling something that's a little bit of a higher end product and you're putting Armenian motifs on it, I'm all for that. We do have a lot of competitors near us, yeah, like Turkey is known for denim and cotton and all this kind of stuff. That's fine. I had put in my notes when I was preparing this that Azerbaijan has oil that's going to go out of style soon. So is denim and cotton because it's really bad for the environment to keep making more and more of that. So I'm not afraid that we can't be the better producer in the region. So I hope that this inspires you to feel the same.
I would like to share with you the story of Hasmi Khachaturian, a woman who narrowly escaped death after experiencing domestic violence for nearly a decade. 15 years ago, when the Women's Support Center opened its doors, we were facing three main hurdles. The first being that there was little to no societal awareness about the issue of domestic violence. If you were here at the time, you know that it was taboo to talk about. People generally felt like one should not air their dirty laundry. And the general sentiment was that it was a private family matter that should be dealt with in the home environment, and that it wasn't as prevalent as people were saying. The second main issue that we were facing was that there were little to no services available for victims and their families. And the services that were available were centralized here in Yerevan, and they were not comprehensive in nature, nor were they using international best practices. The third issue was that we had no legislation on domestic violence. We had no legal mechanisms in place to protect survivors, and nothing to also punish perpetrators. Hasmik was born and raised in a village near Gavar, an area in the north known for its conservatism. She met Sarkis from a nearby village. They got married. She moved in with him and his family, and together they had 2 children. From the very first day of their marriage, Hasmik was brutally subjected to domestic violence, and the violence only got worse over time. On one particularly horrific day, she received blows to her head so severe that it damaged her eardrum. She was bleeding. She had cigarette burns on her hands, and she knew that evening if she didn't flee, that it was a matter of life or death. So that night, without any belongings, she fled to the nearby river and stayed there overnight. And that's where her mother found her the next morning in a devastating state. She was taken to the hospital, and from there the hospital contacted our center. When Hasmik arrived to us at our shelter, she was whittled down to nothing. She had no self-worth, no self-confidence. She was scared, anxious, depressed, and unsure of her next steps. While she was able to be reunited with her daughter, her husband would not let her have their son, and so she remained at our shelter with her daughter as she went through the very arduous process of beginning that first stages of overcoming trauma and rehabilitating. She also at the same time started 2 legal battles. One was to regain custody of her son, and the second was to take the perpetrator to court. In her case, unfortunately, while the perpetrator was found guilty of torture, which should have led to a prison sentence of 3 to 7 years according to Armenian law, instead he was given a 1.5-year sentence, but he was also then granted amnesty and never spent a single day in jail. The system at the time completely failed to protect her and to punish the perpetrator. It was a broken system. But Hasmik's story is also a story of survival. because Hasmik went on to start her own small business, making and selling gata to nearby distributors in Yerevan. She also went on to complete higher education, something she was never allowed to do in the course of her marriage. And she is a member of the Women's Support Center team to this day. She's one of the first people that women see when they come to our shelters. She serves as a beacon of hope for them because she herself also came to our shelter in a shattered state. And so women look to her for hope. And not only that, she's an advocate at a national level. She's a spokesperson for domestic violence. She has inspired countless people to end the cycle of violence for themselves. I want to fast forward now to 2024. I told you that there were three main problems: no societal awareness, little to no services, no law. Well, I'm proud and happy to tell you today that the situation for women and children in the country who are experiencing domestic violence has radically improved. I am convinced that a woman like Hasmik in 2024 would have seen an entirely different outcome today. A woman like Hasmik would have most likely ended the cycle of violence much sooner. And our numbers are showing this. And this is testament to the fact that people here are recognizing domestic violence for what it is, a crime, and they're willing to break that cycle of violence sooner in their relationships. Not only that, but our center is on the forefront of also making sure that there are services available to women and children across the country. Starting in 2020, we helped lead an initiative to establish domestic violence support centers in every Mars. And not only that, but we, after many years of grassroots activism, many years of campaigning, protesting, and knocking on doors to make sure that the state was taking this issue seriously, we finally did get in 2017 a domestic violence law passed. We all know from the multiple crises that we've been facing in this country, from COVID to war, conflict, political instability, and all of these stressors we know have exacerbated the issue of domestic violence here in Armenia. And yet, we continue to find ourselves on this positive trajectory to addressing this issue in this country, which fills me with hope and optimism for the future. And on a personal note, I would just like to say that I'm so proud to be a member of the Women's Sports Center team. And my journey, of course, began with Birthright. And I was only able to witness this and be a part of this change because I was brought here with Birthright, which allowed me to experience this country on my own terms. And it allowed me to not only see myself here, but build a life here, build a career here, and a family here. Thanks.